So you got some talk about people debating on, is this a Christian nation or not? Uh, and honestly, no. No. And it never has been. And what's keeping it from being a Christian nation is not leftism and liberals and all that. It's the right-wingers who have taken over what the way they're doing things and calling it Christianity. It makes other people terrified of it because it's not Christianity at all. This Puritanism and hatred, and I don't know, it's like the complete opposite of Christianity that they're passing off as Christianity, and that's just not going to hold up. I mean, it's, first of all, if you're talking about Christianity, you're talking about the New Testament, you're talking about the words written in red mostly, okay? Here's what that's going to mean. It'll completely destroy this system. If anybody tries to really make this a Christian country, it will completely destroy this country. In a good way, my opinion. Because the bottom line, everybody gets food, everybody gets water, everybody gets a place to live. That's just Christianity. Sorry, that's the way it is. If you've got more than what you need, you give it to other people. That's Christianity. If you have a problem with that, you're not a Christian. Okay? If your entire country is, your view of how the country should run is adverse to that, then it ain't a Christian country. It's as simple as that. What would Jesus do? Would Jesus feed the hungry? Yes. He'd feed the hungry. He'd give everybody water. Everybody would have a place to live. And the funny thing is, when people start talking about this as a Christian country, it was started by a Christian, what they did is they came over and took land, okay? At best, nobody else was occupying it. At worst, they took it from someone and killed the people that were originally there, okay? Let's go best case scenario. Best case scenario, and you got a lot of conservative Christians that'll talk about this, it was anointed by God and this and that. Well, what happened when that happened? These people came over and took land. They didn't buy it from anybody. They just took it. Now, why is that suddenly evil communism now? Isn't that weird? That doesn't hold up. So if you're trying to say that was Christian then, why isn't it Christian now? You know, one of the more frustrating things to me, I can remember living a certain place, certain region. I don't have to be this vague, but whatever. There was a house that I was aware of, may or may not have occupied. And there's a house behind it, down a road behind it, a longer driveway. Both of these were brick houses. And I had another neighbor farther down, also a brick house. That house down the long driveway belonged to the brother of the people down that way, the other neighbor. He died. He died before I moved there. Cat's out of the hat on that. Out of the bag, I mean. Anyway, that house got left into disrepair. I struggled with lawnmowers, but I finally managed to mow down the driveway, and I just made it into the yard. And those neighbors put up a fence, blocked me from doing that. In a nice way, you know. They weren't mean about it, but it's obvious that the fence was put up there to stop me from doing that. And trees started growing up. Tall weeds, this and that. It got to be a mess back there. Time went on. At some point, as I predicted at the time, one of the dead trees in the front snapped in half and just shot through the roof of the house like a javelin. You could look through the front door and you could see the light coming down. And you could even see the limb, the piece of the tree that had went in. And you see raccoons running in and out. It was just a haven in there. Rats, snakes, mice raccoons, possums, God knows what. It just turned, because the roof is open in that one part now. And I don't know what's happened to it since. I'm sure it's completely condemned. It may be collapsed. I don't even know. Now, here's the point I'm getting to in saying all that, because that's not the only case of that happening, not by a long shot. If a person had snuck back there and started living in that house, the police would have been called. The raccoons can live in it. The rats, the mice, the snakes, they can live in it. Person can't live in it. Why do we have, when do human beings get to have less right to live than rats and mice and rodents and even parasites? You know, there's this is just a rumor, I don't know how true it is. And I don't know how much of this is still around. There's something called Gager lime down in a place called Sherwood, Tennessee. And it was in its original form years ago. It was an extraordinary design of an old factory. I guess they did lime something or other. I'm no expert as far as that goes. But it went out of business and it fell into disrepair and much of it fell down. But there's some pieces of it still up. I don't know what happened. But there'd been at one time some debate on trying to get it back going, restore it somehow or another. And they couldn't do that because they were of a snail or something like that. This is a story I was told. It was endangered. And so they couldn't build that. Isn't this crazy? Because you can't, that sounds like something tree hugging. That sounds liberal, and but not really. I mean, certainly that other, look at all the abandoned houses. You can watch, I mentioned Hoods and Hollers a whole lot. That's a channel on YouTube. And I don't know what his beliefs are. I'm talking about his videos. You can see some of the West Virginia towns. You can just drive through these destroyed houses, raggedy houses. Cops don't go by there. Nobody does. If a human being tried to live in one of them houses, the cops would show up. And the conservatives try to argue, well, you can't do that for free. Somebody bought that, you'd be taking it. Look at it. Look at it. It's already taken. It's gone. It's only costing them money if somebody's living in it. That's a crazy notion, isn't it? It's a crazy notion to me that the same people who demand some sort of payment for a building or a spot of land that the original owners are long since dead, and yet they have to be compensated for that, are completely okay with the way this country began. And they're completely against reparations. That's weird, isn't it? That's very selective. But the bottom line is, if you want to claim Christianity, everybody gets what they need. Everybody gets to live their lives. This servitude life doesn't exist. This is not Christian. It's not even in line with the Old Testament. Some people like to take lines out of the Bible and just sort of say, well, this is what it means. Meanwhile, it's like I'm looking at it. It's not saying what you're saying. You're just trying to say that what it says is what you're saying it says. That doesn't hold up. That's your interpretation of it. What's it really saying? They do that a lot. Like, you look at the Adam and Eve thing. Somehow the curse of the apple, the man is supposed to work and all that. And they try to argue that's the way why women feel pain during childbirth. That doesn't even really hold up. But here's the issue. You can work without having a job. You can work. You don't have to be in a factory. It's like their weird twist on marriage, because they act like it's, they talk about Christianity and religion when it comes to marriage. But if you went to just religious people to get married, these same people wouldn't count it as real. So if it's just a religious thing, why do you have government documents? That's strange. It shows you they're not really Christian. They're some sort of weird statist. There's some sort of, I don't know what you would call it, but they worship the state. They got these weird pseudo-religious ideas about the state, and they worship the state. And, these people are probably on both sides of the political spectrum. But, their political leaders sort of become their prophets. And that's why you can't say things about them. Because they're not the president. They're not the vice president. They're not the secretary of state. They're not governor this or representative that. They're the prophets of the holy state. Because none of this is backed up by Christianity. And I don't think it's backed up by the Old Testament. It's crazy to me that somebody would sit there and try to claim that Jesus Christ would be sitting in the car next to you going down a city street and be okay with McDonald's and Burger King and all these different places. And the realization that the reason why there are great numbers of people who are poor and not allowed to have the basic things in life that they need and have to slave away days and hours of their lives that they cannot get back is so that these places can exist. So you got it backward. These places do not make a life for people. People are not allowed to have a life so those places can exist. That's the way that works. Do not be fooled. That's the way that works. Poverty is manufactured to build those. It's a vicious cycle over and over again. Poverty is manufactured to build bullcrap businesses that don't really need to exist. Because you know what does need to exist? Medical personnel. Medical facilities. Fire stations. Things like that. And you need college degrees and all kinds of training and things like that. And the schools, something else you need, are not affordable for a lot of people to get the schooling to do this. A lot of people, I guarantee you, there's a lot of people who want in roles that take schooling that can't afford the schooling. So they never do it. And where they end up? Burger King, McDonald's, factories, places like that don't matter. That's not their passion. That shouldn't exist in the first place. That's the truth. That's the truth. People need to come to terms with that. All these car parts factories, all these fast food places, most of the stores you go to shouldn't exist. That's the reality. And poverty is manufactured and enforced. And bills and taxes and regulations and all these things are there. You constantly have to pay on to keep you poor so that you can work at these places and make a person rich for a bit, to be on top of nothing. It's insane to me that you got somebody up over Burger King or McDonald's or lots of other places. I know I pick on them a lot. But all these other places, there's a multimillionaire, if not a billionaire, on top of a place like that serves garbage 24/7. 24/7. Or really any of the car companies. Because that time is past. And I wish more people would get behind that. Get an old vehicle. Stop buying this new crap. Seriously. You can't even get a vehicle into the shop, an old one into the shop, for understandable, defensible repairs. Because there's a Toyota Tercel and a Hyundai Elantra and a Mazda 626 and a Chevy Volt and all this stupid garbage that never should have even existed. It's in the way because they're throwing warning lights and a computer's malfunctioning and a timing belt has got to be replaced every 10,000 miles. And all this goofy crap is going on. It can't even run on regular gas. And it's in the way. Again, a lot of these things, people weren't worrying about people losing jobs. The reality is it could cause a problem. True. But the reality is that a lot of these jobs shouldn't exist. It'd be very interesting. It's definitely an interesting thought exercise. Well, what would happen if all these jobs disappeared? Like however many places there are to work. What happens if all these places go away for like a year? Like we're shutting everything down for a year. I mean, your knee-jerk thought right there is, well, people aren't going to be able to make money, and so they're not going to be able to pay their bills, which is an understandable thought to have. But my question is, why do they need to pay those? I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but think on it for a little bit. There's absolutely no reason why people still need to be paying all this stuff. And I've said this on a different video. With all the technology that's going on, all the automation, why are things more expensive? Why do we have less time? Isn't that weird? We have less time than we used to have, not more. Less. Things are more expensive, not cheaper. We have less time, not more. Doesn't make any sense. Unless that's the way the system operates. And it's certainly not a Christian thing. See, mark my words. If you pulled out a book, you pulled out a Bible, and tried to carefully organize, all right, well, how would we, let's just start with a clean slate. Everybody's here now. Let's just start with a clean slate. January next year, first day, January 1st, it's going to be a Christian nation. The whole thing, from the president on down, is going to be a Christian nation. What would that mean? People really need to think about this. And even think about it if you're an atheist or something like that. It's worth thinking about. Because it's not going the direction that you think it's going to go. It's not. There's not going to be people. I don't think it's going to affect who you marry, who you live with, your personal life. I don't think it will, because that's kind of a freedom thing. And if you look at what Jesus did, he saved Mary Magdalene. In the Old Testament, that was perfectly okay what they were doing, and stoning her to death. Which is crazy to think that there was people that called themselves godly back then who picked up rocks and beat people's brains out with them. Because they thought that's what God wanted. That's something to think about, though. What would happen? What would happen? Because I can tell you some things right off the bat, just little loose things. I mean, they might be irrelevant because they might change so much that they might not even be necessary to think about. But for one thing, mandatory overtime would be gone. 100%. The fact that there's any job in this Christian nation, or even if you just went by Jewish, you go by the Old Testament, because that's where it mentions it. You can't work 7 days a week. It's against God to work 7 days a week. It is against God's word. That's in the book. That's in the book. So any company that's making you do that is anti-religion. It is against your religion. And here's the thing. Here's what that means too. That's not just a matter of, which there's plenty of these, jobs that'll work you God knows how many days in a row. I know I've mentioned that one that was going to be 10, 12s in a row. It wouldn't even be, not only would it not be 7, it couldn't be 6. Because you have to do some kind of work at home. If you work somebody 6 days, they have to do their homework the 7th day. Therefore, the only amount of jobs only amount of days any human being could work by the Bible would be 5 days. 5. And you didn't have to, another thing people twist is that making Sunday the day. Well, somebody's got to work that day. So it's a different day for everybody. It doesn't have to be the same day. That's the way you get around that. So, I mean, right away, the work situation shows you it's not Christian. You're going to have to explain to me how that's Christian, that's allowed. Because the Bible it's one of the 10 Commandments. Strictly against that. And while people are going Old Testament, you notice they don't seem to see that part about adultery, do they? They'll use that same area to try to say, well, this right here is referring to gay people, and therefore gay people are evil. And it's like, did you skip somewhere to get there? I think you skipped some verses. They don't see that. They don't see adultery for some reason. Now, the funny thing about the gay thing is they take some part where it's saying men with men and women with women and burning in their lust and this and that. Here's the problem with that. Thinking that's referring to gay people. Or even thinking it's referring to sexuality at all. You could make a strong argument that what it's referring to, first you got to understand what lust is. You can't lust for something that you're owed. That's not how that works. What's a lust for power? It's somebody wanting more power than they are due. What's a lust for money? It's somebody wanting more money than what is due them. You can't lust after your paycheck, for example. You can't lust after your husband or wife because there's one of them and you're already promised to each other. You've promised yourselves to each other. Therefore, you can't lust after each other. That's desire. Lust and desire are two different things. Lust is like, what is bloodlust? You know, bloodlust. Somebody's after someone else's blood. They're after it's a vicious killer of some sort. Lust in terms of somebody desiring another person won't hold up. The bottom line is what it's probably talking about there is putting aside relationships and instead hanging out with your boys or with your girls and getting into all kinds of ridiculous things that's got nothing to do with anything, pushing them aside and just getting with these people. And it could even be arguing against business. Some people have said was sexual and is talking about preying on children, which is also possible. I lean more towards that it's not sexual at all. And it's in fact referring to sort of the cats in the cradle sort of thing. Pushing aside your family to get with your partners and this and that, and just trying to covet things and greed and all that sort of thing. That which makes more sense. It holds up with more of the definition of lust. But, you know, we got Monty Fritz talking about how some sort of spiritual battle going on. He thinks he's a Christian. How? How's he a Christian? And what's funny is, even if he did actually stand on these principles that he's now claiming to have, where was your talk about this in the past? It's kind of like Bernie Sanders with all the stuff he was talking about. You believed any of this stuff, you've endorsed everybody that was ever against it. RFK running his mouth. Tulsi Gabbard running her mouth. It's like you endorsed these people that you're now ranting and raving against. That's clearly you're lying. Trump is pro-data center. Trump is for the flock cameras. Trump is owned by Israel. Fritz supports Trump. So anything he claims to be against, he's obviously not. See, he's doing the same thing that they do on the other side. They don't support such and such, but they support this person who supports such and such. So it's like they're laundering your support. But again, this is not a Christian nation. It could be. And what's funny is it would actually look a lot more like socialism. Now, I'm not too sure it would go that far. It kind of supersedes it. It's bigger than that. It's like I've explained before, it's bigger than that. Socialism or communism, either one, is supposed to be fixing a broken system. If the system's not broken, it don't have to be fixed. If people have morals and they take care of each other, you don't need a system that forces anybody to. It's the way that works. If people already get what they need and what they want within reason, you don't need something that enforces it. So this cutthroat capitalism, this anti-Christian, this Satanism, this cruelty from capitalism is forcing people the direction of socialism and communism. There's no bigger proponent, mitigator of communism than cutthroat capitalism. You have to do it to survive. I mean, you look at all the social services that are there. Why are they there? Because you can't afford to live without them. Why? Because capitalism, that's why. It's all about taking everything you've got. So you have to keep manufacturing or it'll take everything. So this is a few things to think about, and this is definitely longer than I wanted it to go. But blame the cat a little bit. He was distracting me. He's deaf. You can't really call him down. But anyway, just a few things to think about. Stop calling this a Christian nation. If you want it to be Christian, you can make it that way. But if you're a conservative and you're leaning towards, and I've heard the term Christian capitalism, which is about stunned me into complete silence, you're going to have to lean towards helping people. It's the way you're going is not Christian. It's not. You can have issues with the leftism all you want to, but what you're doing is not Christian. If you're this hardcore conservative, you're not Christian. If you think this system should continue the way it's going, even under Republicans, you're not Christian. You should be a Christian. That's going to mean you're going to help people. It's as simple as that. You're supposed to love everyone. If you don't, you're not a Christian. If the system is not built on love, it's not a Christian system. And that's in the book. Pick it up. God knows I need to.